What's up, everybody? Good afternoon. It is still our first full day post Pete Carroll here in Seattle, and we're still trying to figure out this whole head coaching search thing, trying to figure out who the Seahawks might get, who they might interview with, what kind of a process they might go through to find this guy. But I want to ask one simple question, and it's a question that a lot of Seahawks fans have had of me, of the Hawks Nest, of any Seahawks talking head or personality or YouTuber or analyst or anything. How desirable is the Seattle Seahawks job? How desirable is this position to coaches across the NFL and, let's say, NCAA as well? So when every available coach in the NFL lines up, if those coaches could pick their landing spot, would they pick Seattle first? Would they pick them second? Would they pick them third? Would they pick them fourth? Or would they be one of the last teams they pick? Of the openings and likely openings, who is going to do the best job luring the best coaching talent? Obviously, this is a very important question because the guys who are clearly and obviously desirable this offseason, guys like a Jim Harbaugh, guys like a Ben Johnson, guys like a maybe Dan Quinn's in that class too. I don't know. Anybody who's a hot item, a hot ticket item, is going to to a certain extent want to go to a good situation, not just a situation. There are going to be guys out there who would be happy to have any head coaching job, but those are not necessarily the guys that you're jumping up and down to get. You want your position to be desirable. So I was thinking about this. So what I decided to do is I made a scoring system with all teams in the NFL right now that are either looking for a new head coach or are probably looking for a new head coach. And I wanted to rank them in these four categories on a scale of 1 to 10, see how it totaled, and get an idea of who had the most desirable jobs. Now, obviously, this process is very subjective and not at all mathematical. It's not an exact equation, it's not an exact science. It's just me looking at the situation from the outside and trying to determine what a fair score would be. So keep that in mind as we go forward here. But just understand that I did the best that I could. If you personally have a strong disagreement with anything I've done here, feel free to comment. Feel free to give your own opinion of these head coach vacancies and their desirability. But here's what I came up with after thinking about it. Okay, so the first team we're going to look at here is the Tennessee Titans. They have a vacancy with Vrabel out. I scored them in four categories, just like I did all these teams. We have quarterback, we have roster, we have ownership, and then we have flexibility. Quarterback is self-explanatory. What is the quarterback situation in Tennessee? Ryan Tannehill is coming off the books, and they have Will Levis, a second-round pick from last year, who showed promise and potential in his rookie season, but he wasn't great. He didn't stand out in any over-the-top way. He was just a intriguing talent who showcased his arm, showcased his ability, but we still don't fully know. However, I would give that quarterback situation a 7 out of 10. He's young. He's clearly talented. There's clear potential there. A lot of coaches would love to get their hands on Will Levis going forward. Roster, however, outside of the quarterback, I gave a 3 out of 10. I just wasn't that impressed with it. I do like the fact that they have some young, interesting players on that offensive line with Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, Dylan Radnuns, and Skoronsky. But other than that, I didn't like what their receiver core was bringing to the table. They're losing Derrick Henry, so they don't really have a running back. Their defense didn't have a lot that impressed me, so pretty bad roster in my estimation, especially with them losing a guy like Derrick Henry. Ownership, Amy Adams Strunk has been pretty decent so far. She's had a pretty good track record of success since taking over. However, a couple of recent decisions, like the A.J. Brown trade and the mysterious firing of Mike Vrabel at all, when he seemingly had done a pretty good job, and the refusal to actually try to trade him before firing him, I had to dock her a couple of points because that's a little bit questionable. So I said ownership's a 5 out of 10. Flexibility, however, I gave a 9 out of 10. The only reason I deducted a point is really because they're already in on Will Levis as their quarterback, and I don't think that's a big problem, but there are going to be some coaches out there that would prefer to have their own guy, and they wouldn't really get to have that in Tennessee because Levis is already in place. But other than that, I think most of their other players are younger players, cheaper players. They don't have any big crippling contracts really, except maybe Harold Landry, and you can always get out of those contracts. And they have, I think, the second most cap space in the entire NFL. So their situation is very, very moldable. So I think they're very flexible. So total score 24 out of 40. So that's pretty good. That's a pretty good situation for a head coach to land. All right. Now that we've introduced how I'm scoring this, I'm just going to go ahead and go through the rest of the teams. Shouldn't take nearly as long since the criteria I'm using has now been laid out. Again, I want to stress, this is not scientific, this is not subjective, this is not objective, this is merely a subjective evaluation based on what I'm seeing from these teams externally. There's some stuff that I definitely cannot possibly know about. Okay, next job would be the Las Vegas Raiders. And this one, I don't know if this is open or not. To my knowledge, Antonio Pierce is still the interim coach, which means he doesn't have the position until they give it to him. And I believe he's already interviewing for a couple of jobs, so that indicates to me he hasn't been secured long term by the Vegas Raiders. So as far as I know, their head coaching position is currently open. So I'm going to move forward assuming that. Quarterback, it's got to be a 1 out of 10. Jimmy Garoppolo is bad, and they might be moving off of him anyway, which is good. But Aiden O'Connell, probably not a real NFL quarterback. Maybe you could bump them up to a 2 out of 10 if you really wanted to, but I gave them a 1. There's nothing there. The roster, Max Crosby's nice. They got a couple decent pieces on defense that I'm kind of into. Devontae Adams getting older. Josh Jacobs probably about to hit the ceiling here and come crashing down quickly. Offensive line looks kind of weak. Not too impressed with their roster. I gave it a 4 out of 10. Again, roster minus quarterback. Ownership, it's Mark Davis. They did increase the worth of their team significantly by moving to Vegas, but they're still, until further notice, really bad owners. I gave them a 2 out of 10. Flexibility, however, is pretty good, 7 out of 10. They can easily move off both of their quarterbacks and get new ones. They have a good amount of cap space, so that's a team that could easily be molded. So total score there of 14 out of 40, not so good. Next up would be the Los Angeles Chargers. Quarterback, 9 out of 10. They've got a young quarterback who is very talented, considered to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league despite having accomplished very little in his career because people know how talented he is. He's young. He's got that golden arm. Should be a coach out there who looks at Justin Herbert and goes, I really want to work with that. That's going to get a lot of coaches motivated to go to the Chargers. So, yeah, 9 out of 10. The only issue is that he's already off his rookie deal and he's making a lot of money going forward, but still, really good QB situation. The roster outside the quarterback, however, I'm going to give a 4 out of 10, and that might be generous. Keenan Allen is getting older. Bosa gets hurt way too often. Guys like Asante Samuel Jr. and Ken Murray not really looking all that good to me. They have Rashawn Slater at left tackle. That's good. Corey Linsley looks like he's retiring. Austin Eckler's washed up. Quentin Johnson, not a good start to his career. So 4 out of 10 might be generous, honestly, but I gave them the 4 out of 10. Ownership, what can I say here? 1 out of 10. Dean Spanos is awful. This might be a rare situation where the fact that the team might be sold soon is actually a good thing, but that still puts the situation in flux, and it's going to drive some potential coaching candidates off. So 1 out of 10. Flexibility, they have no cap space. They have negative cap space. They're married to a lot of these players that they probably don't want to be married to. So that's a total of 16 out of 40. So that is not a very good situation either. A little bit better than the Raiders, I think, but not by much, just because Herbert's that good. Next team we're going to look at here is the Washington Commanders. Quarterback, 1 out of 10. Sam Howell completely fell off a cliff as the season went on. I see no reason to believe he's going to be anything, and they don't have anything behind him that's interesting. Roster, I gave a 3 out of 10, mostly because they traded away some of their best assets, guys like Chase Young and Montez Sweat. They still have some interior defensive linemen that I like. I like their receivers. Their running backs are okay, but they need to work on the offensive line. They need to get more stuff on the back end defensively, the back seven, and just even outside of the quarterback position, it's just a team that I think needs a lot of work right now. Ownership, we don't know yet because these guys just acquired the team, and all they've really done is watch a team be bad, and then they fired Ron Rivera, which I don't think gives us enough evidence to go on. So I'm going to give them a 5 out of 10 plus 1 because I do have a good feeling about them personally. That's just me, my personal opinion. I think that ownership group is going to be good. I like what I've seen from them so far. So I'm going to nudge them a little bit in the direction of positivity, but not by much. They're still just kind of a unknown until we actually see what they do over a few years. Flexibility, however, they have all. I think they lead the entire league in cap space. Their quarterback situation is completely moldable. 10 out of 10 for a total score of 20 out of 40. So average, okay, passable. And then we have the Atlanta Falcons, quarterback, 1 out of 10. They don't have anything that I think is desirable in the slightest sense of the word. Ritter, I don't know what to say about Ritter at this point. He was given a good situation and couldn't do anything positive with it. Roster, however, I give a 9 out of 10. I love this Falcons roster. I love the fact that they built up their offensive line. I love the Drake London Kyle Pitts combo. I like a lot of the stuff going on that defense in Atlanta. I think this is a really good roster outside of the quarterback situation. They got Bijan. They got great running backs. This is a team that could be really, really elite if they get a good quarterback. So I love the roster, 9 out of 10. Ownership, Arthur Blank is good. Always liked Arthur Blank. Seems like a good owner. Seems like a good dude. Seems like he tries to do the right thing. Seems like he really wants this team to be a winner. Gave it an 8 out of 10. Flexibility, they have about an average amount of cap space. So that's a 5 out of 10, but I'm going to give them an extra point because they're not married to a quarterback in any sense of the word. It's trivial for them to go find a new one, draft a new one, sign a new one, whatever. So I'm going to bump them a point in the positive direction. And that is a final score of 28 out of 40, which is really, really good. That's going to be one of the most desirable jobs out there. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think it's the most desirable job out there right now. Carolina Panthers next up. They have their opening quarterback. I'd like to go a little bit higher, but Bryce Young looked so bad as a rookie and was so inept in so many different ways. Even though I know he's the number one overall pick and he's very talented, and Carolina's not going to move off of him anytime soon, I can't go higher than a 5 out of 10 because he just didn't look right whatsoever, and I'm not a believer in Bryce Young to begin with. So I'm just going to go with a 5. You have to give him some credit. He's young. There is some stuff there that some coaches are going to like, but I just didn't see enough of it. Roster, 3 out of 10. They're probably going to be losing a couple of key guys that carried them to the little bit of success they've had lately. Um, I don't really like the way the roster is constructed. They don't have receivers. They have Miles Sanders, who's probably just about to hit the wall here. So, not a fan of that Carolina Panthers roster, really. Ownership, Tepper's been a train wreck so far. I can't give it any more than a 1 out of 10. If I could give it a 0 out of 10, I probably would, but let's just go with a 1 out of 10. I think he's been an absolute terror since taking over the Carolina Panthers. Flexibility, however, I'm going to go with a 5 out of 10. They have a good amount of cap space. They have money to spend. They can create a little more money. However, I can't go higher than 5 out of 10 because they've already committed themselves to this quarterback for at least the next couple years, and that's going to be constricting for some potential coaches because they may not like Bryce Young. So that's 14 out of 40, which is bad. That's not a good situation. All right, now we get to the Seattle Seahawks here, and here's the way I see it. Quarterback. Geno Smith is a good quarterback, but he is older. He's not really got a ceiling beyond what we've seen. He's a good quarterback who could look great or elite in a really, really good situation, but he's not going to grow beyond what he currently is, I don't think. And we do not have any other quarterback on the roster who is young and promising and with potential. Remember, even if you like Drew Lock, he's a free agent. So I can't go higher than a 6 out of 10 because Geno is older. He's going to turn 34 next year. It's not a situation that every head coach would love to fall into. Roster, I think we have a really nice roster outside of the quarterback. We've got a couple really good running backs. We've got a couple blue chippers on the offensive line. A receiver core is the envy of most of the rest of the league. You've got some talent on the defense. There's got to be some work done there, but you've got Boye Mafe. You've got a guy like a Devin Witherspoon. You've got Rico Wilmer. There is some stuff going on that defense, but mostly that offense is pretty loaded. You got to fix the defensive line and the offensive line. A lot of it comes down to whether or not you're able to retain a guy like Leonard Williams, but it is a good roster. Ownership, after what happened with Carroll, I would like to go a little bit higher to give some credit to Jody for doing what she needed to do. but the ownership situation is in flux. So I have to give it a 3 out of 10 because we might have new owners in 2 years, maybe even 1 year. Flexibility is a 5 out of 10. We don't have very much cap space right now. In fact, I think we're in the negative. However, we know that it's going to be very easy for us to create cap space by making some very obvious cuts. Guys like Diggs, Adams, Ballore, Monet, and we'll be back in a reasonably flexible place. And there is flexibility with that quarterback spot as well, by the way. If we get somebody who really doesn't like Geno, we could just move off of him. That's possible. So I'm going to say 5 out of 10 for now. It's right in the middle. So that's a final score of 21 out of 40 in the desirability category. So average, decent, okay, passable. As of right now, though, I can't say it's anything more than that because of the ownership situation more than anything else. And finally, we're going to do the New England Patriots, even though they haven't fired Bill Belichick yet, because everybody expects it. So let's just go ahead and break down what we know, assuming this position will be open. Quarterbacks a 2 out of 10. It could easily be a 1 out of 10. Bailey Zappi showed a little bit down the stretch. Mac Jones is completely worthless at this point, though. So it's either a 2 out of 10 or a 1 out of 10. Roster, I'm going to go 3 out of 10. I like Christian Gonzalez a lot. They've got some pieces along that defense that I do think are valuable. But overall, I think it's a very weak roster that Belichick's put together as a GM over the last several years. Ownership, 10 out of 10. Robert Kraft is among the best owners in sports and among the best owners in all of football. That's an easy 10 out of 10. Flexibility, they have a ton of cap space. They're not married to any quarterback. They're really married to very little on that team. They don't have a lot of big contracts that I know of. They don't have a lot of crippling things getting in their way that would prevent a rebuild or a flush. So that's a 10 out of 10. So to me, that Patriots situation is a 25 out of 40. Pretty good, pretty solid. All right, so that's everything. So to break it down, the Seahawks, so just talking about the Seahawks situation, 21 out of 40 means they're behind New England, they're behind Atlanta, and they're behind Tennessee. So of the likely 8 coaching openings that we have this year, I think the Seahawks are 4th in desirability. The ownership thing really just kind of looms over everything right now, and it's hard to get away from that. Unless Jody Allen can go out and give some kind of guarantee she's planning to own the team for another 5+ years, there's not really much we can do about that. If not for that ownership thing, I would feel like we would be maybe the most desirable. But it is what it is. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys think I'm misreading this. Let me know if you disagree with my evaluation. But I'm feeling pretty good about this personally. I kind of like the way this landed. It makes a lot of sense to me. See you guys later. Go Hawks. And yeah, that's how I see the viability and desirability of each head coaching opening as of right now in the NFL.